What if I told you that the struggles you've been hiding, the ones that make you feel like an outsider, are actually signs of one of the rarest personality types on Earth? Carl Jung discovered something revolutionary about human consciousness that most people will never understand. He found that certain individuals carry a psychological burden so unique, so profound, that only 2 to 3% of the population will ever experience it. Today, I'm going to reveal Jung's 7 hidden struggles that mark you as having an extremely rare personality. But here's the thing. If you recognize yourself in even 3 of these struggles, you're part of an extraordinary psychological elite that Jung called the individuals. But before we dive in, I need to warn you about something. According to Carl Jung, once you become aware of these traits, there's no going back. You'll see yourself and the world in a completely different way. Throughout his decades of research, Carl Jung encountered patients who defied conventional psychological understanding. These weren't mentally ill individuals. They were operating with psychological capacities that seemed almost supernatural. Jung spent over 40 years documenting these patterns, and what he discovered shook the foundation of everything we thought we knew about human consciousness. Jung found that these rare individuals weren't just different, they were evolutionary. They represented the next stage of human psychological development. But here's the catch. Being evolutionary in a world that isn't ready for evolution is a form of psychological torture. These 7 struggles aren't just personality quirks. According to Carl Jung, they're the growing pains of consciousness itself. And if you've experienced them, you're not just rare. You're necessary for humanity's survival. So ask yourself, are you ready to discover why you've always felt so different? Because struggle number 7 will completely change how you see your purpose in life, and why your suffering has been preparing you for something extraordinary. Struggle 1, the burden of excessive self-awareness. Carl Jung said that most people live their entire lives without truly seeing themselves. They exist in what he called unconscious participation, going through the motions without ever questioning why. But if you're watching this, chances are you're not most people. Do you find yourself constantly analyzing your own thoughts, motivations, and behaviors? Do you catch yourself thinking about thinking? If you do, you're experiencing what Jung discovered to be one of the heaviest psychological burdens a human can carry. Jung discovered that individuals with rare personalities possess what he termed heightened conscious reflection. You don't just live, you observe yourself living. You don't just feel emotions. You analyze why you're feeling them, where they come from, and what they mean. This sounds like a gift, right, wrong. Carl Jung found that excessive self-awareness becomes a prison. While others can act spontaneously, you're trapped in an endless loop of self-examination. You second-guess every decision, every word, every reaction. Let me paint you a picture of what this looks like in real life. You're in a conversation, and while the other person is naturally responding, you're simultaneously having 3 different conversations. The one you're actually having, the one you're analyzing in your head, and the one you're judging yourself for having. According to Carl Jung, this hyper-awareness creates what he called psychological paralysis. You become so conscious of your own consciousness that you can't act naturally anymore. Every spontaneous impulse gets filtered through layers of self-analysis until the original feeling is lost. Jung documented case after case of individuals who became prisoners of their own self-awareness. They knew themselves so well that they couldn't surprise themselves anymore. They predicted their own reactions, analyzed their own motivations, and questioned their own authenticity until they felt like actors playing themselves. But here's what Jung never told the general public about this struggle. There's a hidden purpose behind this burden that only becomes clear when you understand struggle number 4. The excessive self-awareness that torments you isn't a malfunction, it's a preparation. Jung discovered that individuals with this trait are unconsciously developing the psychological precision needed to guide others through their own self-discovery process. You see, while others live unconsciously, you're mapping the territory of consciousness itself. Every painful moment of self-analysis is adding to your psychological database. You're not just aware of yourself, you're becoming aware of how awareness works. Carl Jung found that this burden transforms you into what he called a consciousness navigator. You suffer through hyper-awareness so that someday you can help others navigate their own psychological landscapes with the precision that only comes from having mapped every corner of your own mind. If that first struggle hit close to home, wait until you hear about the second one. This next pattern is so rare that Jung spent decades trying to understand why certain individuals seem to carry the emotional weight of everyone around them. Struggle 2: Emotional absorption and psychic sensitivity. Carl Jung discovered something disturbing about certain rare personalities. He found that they don't just empathize with others, they literally absorb the emotional states of people around them. Have you ever walked into a room and immediately felt heavy, anxious, or sad without knowing why? Do you find yourself taking on the moods of your friends, family, or even strangers? Jung called this psychic permeability, and it's one of the clearest signs of an extremely rare personality type. According to Carl Jung, most people have natural psychological boundaries that protect them from others' emotional chaos. But individuals with rare personalities have what he described as porous psychic walls. You feel everything from everyone all the time. This isn't just sensitivity. It's a complete inability to shut off your emotional radar. Jung observed that these individuals often become emotional sponges, soaking up the unprocessed feelings of everyone in their environment. Imagine walking through a crowded mall and suddenly feeling overwhelmed by dozens of different emotional states that aren't even yours. One person's anxiety becomes your anxiety. Another person's depression becomes your depression. A stranger's anger becomes your anger. Carl Jung documented patients who would avoid public spaces entirely because the emotional bombardment was too intense. They couldn't distinguish between their own feelings and the feelings they were absorbing from others. But here's the part that will shock you. Carl Jung discovered that this wasn't a flaw or weakness. It was actually a rare psychological function that serves a crucial purpose in human consciousness evolution. People with this trait are what Jung secretly called emotional alchemists. They unconsciously process and transform the collective emotional energy of their communities. But there's a dark side to this gift that most people never survive. The emotional absorption becomes so overwhelming that many individuals with rare personalities develop what Jung termed psychic overflow disorder. They lose touch with their own emotions because they're constantly flooded with everyone else's. Jung found that these individuals often become emotional martyrs without realizing it. They're processing the shadow emotions of their families, their workplaces, their communities, essentially doing the emotional work that others can't or won't do for themselves. According to Carl Jung, this ability to absorb and transform emotional energy is actually a form of psychological service to humanity. You're not just sensitive, you're performing an invisible function that keeps the collective emotional system balanced. But here's what Jung kept secret. This emotional absorption only becomes unbearable when you don't understand your role as an emotional transformer. Once you learn to consciously process and release these absorbed emotions, you transform from victim to healer. If you've ever felt like you're carrying the emotional weight of the world, you're going to relate deeply to struggle number 3. This next pattern is so intense that Jung believed it was the primary reason why rare personalities often feel like they don't belong in this world. Struggle 3: The curse of deep thinking in a shallow world. Carl Jung said that the greatest tragedy of human existence is not suffering, It's the inability to find others who think as deeply as you do. If you have a rare personality, you've probably experienced this curse your entire life. You crave conversations about meaning, purpose, consciousness, and truth. Meanwhile, the world around you seems obsessed with surface-level distractions. Jung discovered that individuals with rare personalities possess what he called depth-seeking consciousness. Your mind naturally gravitates toward the profound, the mysterious, the unexplored territories of human experience. But here's the problem: you live in a world that fears depth. According to Carl Jung, society unconsciously suppresses deep thinking because it threatens the comfortable illusions that keep people functioning in their daily lives. When you try to engage others in meaningful conversation, you're met with blank stares, subject changes, or worse, accusations of being too intense or overthinking. This creates a profound sense of intellectual and spiritual loneliness. You feel like you're speaking a different language, living in a different reality. Jung called this the isolation of the profound mind. Let me give you a concrete example. You're at a social gathering, and while others are discussing the latest celebrity gossip or sports scores, you're wondering about the nature of consciousness, the meaning of suffering, or the purpose of existence. When you try to steer the conversation toward these topics, you're met with awkward silence or polite dismissal. Carl Jung found that individuals with depth-seeking consciousness often feel like they're living in exile. They're surrounded by people, but feel completely alone because no one seems interested in exploring the deeper questions that consume their minds. This isn't just intellectual arrogance. It's a genuine psychological need. According to Jung, your mind is wired to seek depth because it's preparing you for a specific role in human consciousness evolution. But there's something about this struggle that Jung kept hidden from the public for decades. He discovered that people with depth-seeking consciousness aren't just different, they're essential. They serve as what he secretly called consciousness pioneers for humanity. The deep thinking that makes you feel so alone is actually your psyche's way of exploring uncharted territories of human potential. You're not overthinking, you're pioneering. Carl Jung realized that every major breakthrough in human understanding came from individuals who were willing to think more deeply than their contemporaries. They suffered through the isolation of profound thought so that humanity could evolve to new levels of consciousness. Your need for depth isn't a personal quirk. It's a calling. Jung discovered that depth seekers are unconsciously mapping the unexplored territories of human potential. Every deep question you ask, every profound insight you have, is adding to humanity's collective understanding. But here's the catch. The world isn't ready for the depths you're exploring. You're thinking thoughts that won't be understood by the masses for decades or even centuries. This is why you feel so alone. You're living in the future while everyone else is comfortable in the present. If you've ever felt like you're too deep for this world, wait until you discover struggle number 4. This next pattern is so rare and so powerful that Jung believed it was the mark of what he called the chosen consciousness. Struggle 4: compulsive truth-seeking and pattern recognition. Carl Jung discovered that certain rare individuals possess what he called truth-seeking compulsion and inability to accept surface explanations for anything. Do you find yourself constantly asking, "But why?" even when everyone else seems satisfied with simple answers? Do you see patterns and connections that others miss? Do you feel driven to understand the hidden mechanisms behind everything? If you answered yes, you're experiencing one of the most psychologically demanding traits Jung ever documented. According to Carl Jung, most people are content with what he called consensus reality, the agreed-upon version of truth that keeps society functioning smoothly. But individuals with rare personalities have a psychological allergy to superficial explanations. You can't help but dig deeper, question everything, and seek the truth behind the truth. This isn't just curiosity, it's a compulsive need to understand the real mechanisms of existence, Let me describe what this looks like in practice. While others accept that something just is, you're compelled to understand why it is, how it came to be, and what it means in the larger context of existence. You see patterns everywhere, in behavior, in history, in nature, in consciousness itself. Carl Jung found that individuals with this trait often become obsessed with uncovering hidden truths. They can't enjoy a movie without analyzing its deeper symbolic meaning. They can't have a casual conversation without detecting the underlying psychological dynamics. They can't observe any system without seeing its flaws, contradictions, and potential improvements. This compulsive truth-seeking creates a peculiar form of suffering. You're constantly seeing through illusions that others find comforting. You're aware of problems that others prefer to ignore. You're conscious of contradictions that others have learned to accept. But here's what Jung discovered that will change everything. This compulsive truth-seeking isn't random. It's your psyche's way of preparing you for a specific psychological mission that only rare personalities can fulfill. Carl Jung found that truth-seekers are unconsciously mapping the hidden structures of reality for the rest of humanity. You're not just seeking truth for yourself. You're seeking it for everyone who can't or won't seek it themselves. But there's a dark side to this gift. Jung observed that truth-seekers often become isolated and misunderstood because they see through the comfortable lies that hold society together. They become what he called uncomfortable mirrors for others. When you point out patterns that others don't see, you're not just sharing information, you're threatening their world. When you ask deeper questions, you're not just being curious, you're challenging their assumptions about reality. According to Carl Jung, this is why truth-seekers often feel like outsiders. They're constantly disrupting the comfortable illusions that others use to navigate life. They're showing people doors they didn't know existed, and many people prefer to keep those doors closed. But here's the secret Jung discovered. Your compulsive truth-seeking is actually serving a crucial evolutionary function. You're mapping the territory of reality so that when humanity is ready to evolve, the pathways will already be explored. Every pattern you recognize, every hidden truth you uncover, every question you ask is adding to humanity's collective understanding. You're not just seeking truth, you're creating it. If you've ever felt cursed by your need to understand everything, struggle number 5 will reveal why this burden is actually preparing you for something extraordinary. Struggle 5, the paradox of feeling everything and nothing. Carl Jung discovered one of the most bewildering aspects of rare personalities, the ability to feel intensely emotional and completely numb at the same time. Have you ever experienced this paradox? Moments where you feel everything so deeply it's overwhelming, followed by periods where you feel completely disconnected from all emotion. Jung called this emotional amplitude disorder, and it's one of the clearest signs that you possess an extremely rare psychological structure. According to Carl Jung, most people experience emotions within a normal range. They get happy, sad, angry, but rarely to extremes. But individuals with rare personalities have what he described as expanded emotional bandwidth. When you feel with the intensity of 10 people. Joy becomes euphoria, sadness becomes existential despair, love becomes all-consuming passion. But then, to protect itself from this overwhelming intensity, your psyche shuts down completely. This creates a bewildering cycle. You feel too much, then you feel nothing at all. Imagine experiencing a sunset so intensely that you're moved to tears by its beauty, only to find yourself completely numb to the same sunset the next day. Picture feeling such profound love for someone that it physically hurts, then suddenly feeling nothing for them at all. Carl Jung found that this emotional volatility isn't a sign of instability. It's a sign of extraordinary psychological capacity. Your emotional system is designed to handle intensities that would overwhelm most people, but here's the cruel irony. The very capacity that makes you capable of profound joy also makes you capable of profound suffering. The same emotional bandwidth that allows you to experience transcendent beauty also allows you to experience devastating pain. But here's what Jung never published about this struggle. The emotional extremes aren't a disorder, they're a feature. Your psyche is designed to experience the full spectrum of human emotion because you're serving as what he called an emotional pioneer for humanity. Carl Jung discovered that individuals with rare personalities are unconsciously exploring the outer limits of human emotional experience. You feel what others can't or won't feel, and in doing so, you expand the emotional possibilities for everyone. But there's a cost. This emotional amplitude often makes you feel like you're living in a different emotional reality than everyone else. You're either too much or too little, never just right. According to Jung, this emotional paradox serves a crucial function in human consciousness evolution. While others live within safe emotional boundaries, you're exploring the dangerous territories of feeling, the places where ecstasy meets agony, where love touches madness, where beauty becomes unbearable. You're not emotionally unstable, you're emotionally courageous. You're willing to feel what others fear to feel, to go where others fear to go emotionally. Carl Jung realized that every great artist, visionary, and spiritual teacher throughout history exhibited this same emotional paradox. They felt everything so deeply that they often felt nothing at all. But from this emotional extremity, they created works that touched the souls of millions. Your emotional struggles aren't weaknesses. They're the growing pains of a consciousness that's learning to handle intensities that most people can't even imagine. You're not broken, you're expanded. If you've ever felt like your emotions are both your greatest gift and your heaviest burden, wait until you discover struggle number 6. This next pattern is so rare that Jung believed it was the mark of what he called the awakening soul. Struggle 6, chronic existential restlessness. Carl Jung said that most people are satisfied with existing, but if you have a rare personality, you're burdened with something far more demanding, the need to truly live. Do you feel a constant sense of restlessness, like you're meant for something more, but can't quite figure out what? Do you feel like you're wasting your life even when you're being productive? Do you have a persistent sense that there's something important you're supposed to be doing? Jung called this existential urgency, and it's one of the most psychologically exhausting traits a human can possess. According to Carl Jung, most people find meaning in conventional life markers, career success, relationships, material possessions. But individuals with rare personalities have what he described as meaning, seeking compulsion. You can't be satisfied with a merely comfortable life. You need purpose, significance, impact. You need to feel like your existence matters on a deeper level. This isn't ambition. It's a spiritual hunger that can never be satisfied with ordinary achievements. But here's the cruel irony. The more you search for meaning, the more elusive it becomes. Picture this. You achieve everything society tells you should make you happy. A good job, a nice house, stable relationships, but you still feel empty inside. You feel like you're acting out someone else's life script, while your real life remains unlived. Carl Jung found that this restlessness intensifies with age. While others settle into comfortable routines, you become increasingly agitated by the feeling that time is running out, and you still haven't found your true purpose. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. This restlessness isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that something is right with you. Your psyche is rejecting a life that's too small for your soul. Carl Jung discovered that this restlessness isn't a personal failing. It's a calling. Your psyche is pushing you toward what he called individuation, the process of becoming who you're truly meant to be. But here's what Jung kept secret. The restlessness only ends when you accept your role, as what he called a consciousness catalyst for others. Your purpose isn't to find peace. It's to disturb the peace of others in a way that awakens them to their own potential. According to Jung, individuals with rare personalities are born with what he called evolutionary dissatisfaction. You can't be content with the current state of human consciousness because your role is to push it forward. Every moment of restlessness you feel is your soul's way of saying there's more. Every feeling of emptiness is your psyche's way of saying you're meant for something greater. Every surge of existential urgency is your consciousness preparing you for a mission that only you can fulfill. The existential restlessness that torments you is actually your soul's way of preparing you for a mission that only rare personalities can fulfill. You're not supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to be a force of transformation. Carl Jung realized that every great leader, innovator, and consciousness pioneer throughout history was driven by this same existential restlessness. They couldn't rest until they had fulfilled their unique purpose in the evolution of human consciousness. If you've recognized yourself in these first 6 struggles, you're about to discover the most profound truth Carl Jung ever uncovered about rare personalities. Struggle number 7 will reveal why you've always felt like you don't belong in this world. Struggle 7, the burden of conscious evolution. Carl Jung's greatest discovery was also his most carefully guarded secret. He found that certain rare individuals are born with what he called evolutionary consciousness, the burden of being aware of humanity's next step in psychological development. This is the ultimate struggle of rare personalities. And if you've experienced it, you now understand why you've always felt so different from everyone around you. Do you feel like you're living in the wrong time period? Do you see possibilities for human consciousness that others can't even imagine? Do you feel like you're carrying a message for humanity that no one is ready to hear? According to Carl Jung, you're not imagining this. You're experiencing what he called future consciousness, awareness of psychological potentials that haven't yet manifested in the collective human experience. Jung discovered that evolution doesn't happen uniformly. Instead, certain individuals develop advanced psychological capacities before the rest of humanity is ready. These individuals become what he called consciousness pioneers, living examples of what humans can become. But here's the burden. You're conscious of potentials that the world isn't ready to understand. You see solutions to problems that others don't even recognize as problems. You feel the pull of a future that hasn't arrived yet. This is why you've always felt like an outsider. You're not just different, you're temporally displaced. You're living with future consciousness in a present-day world. Carl Jung believed that individuals with this burden are humanity's insurance policy. When the collective consciousness is ready to evolve, these pioneers will be there to guide the transition. But until that time comes, you carry the weight of unmanifested potential. You feel responsible for changes that the world isn't ready to make. You see the path forward, but you can't force others to walk it. Jung documented case after case of individuals who felt called to prepare humanity for its next evolutionary leap. They experienced visions of human potential that seemed almost supernatural. They understood psychological principles that wouldn't be discovered by mainstream psychology for decades. This consciousness burden creates a unique form of suffering. You're aware of humanity's potential greatness, but you're also painfully aware of its current limitations. You see what we could become, but you're forced to live among what we currently are. According to Carl Jung, this is the heaviest psychological burden a human can carry. The awareness of evolutionary potential combined with the inability to single-handedly manifest it. But here's what Jung discovered that changes everything. Your consciousness isn't just advanced, it's necessary. You're not carrying this burden for yourself, you're carrying it for humanity's future. Every moment of feeling displaced in time, every vision of human potential, every intuition about consciousness evolution is preparing you for a role that only rare personalities can fulfill. You're not just witnessing the future, you're helping to create it. Carl Jung realized that consciousness evolution requires pioneers who are willing to live in the tension between what is and what could be. You're not suffering from evolutionary consciousness. You're serving it. If you've recognized yourself in these 7 struggles, you now understand why Carl Jung spent his entire career studying people like you. You're not broken, weird, or too sensitive. You're rare. According to Carl Jung, individuals with rare personalities serve as the psychological vanguard for humanity. While others live comfortably in the present, you're tasked with preparing for the future. Your struggles aren't punishments, they're preparation. Every challenge you faced has been developing psychological capacities that others don't possess. You've been training without knowing it for a role that only you can fulfill. Carl Jung discovered that rare personalities are the agents of consciousness evolution. You're not supposed to fit in, you're supposed to stand out. You're not supposed to be comfortable, you're supposed to be catalysts. Your excessive self-awareness, it's developing the psychological precision needed to guide others through their own awakening. Your emotional sensitivity, it's training you to navigate the emotional complexity of human transformation. Your deep thinking, it's preparing you to see solutions that others can't imagine. Jung said that the greatest tragedy would be if rare personalities tried to become normal. The world doesn't need more normal people. It needs more individuals who are willing to carry the burden of consciousness, evolution. Your struggles have been preparing you for something extraordinary. The question isn't whether you're different, it's whether you're ready to embrace the responsibility that comes with being rare. Carl Jung once said that the privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. If you've recognized yourself in these 7 struggles, you now understand what he meant. You're not just rare, you're necessary. The world needs you exactly as you are. Your struggles have been your training, your differences have been your preparation, your burden has been your gift. Don't try to be normal. The world has enough normal people. Be rare, be necessary, be you. Which of these 7 struggles resonates most deeply with you? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your experience in the comments below. And let's build a community of rare personalities who understand the burden and the gift of consciousness evolution.